Hey guys, Rain here. Today we're going to be talking about add-ons going into Shadowlands. Just a few add-ons I think that you should be paying notice to. You should download and install, as well as a walkthrough of how to set each one up. Just a side note, I do stream Monday, Thursday, Sunday, 8 to 11 PM GMT. Link down in the description, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up and hit that notification bell to be notified when I next post a video. Let's get into it. Now looking at the list here, you'll see that some of these are very basic UIs. Anyone who's played WoW for a while will recognise most of these. RaidBots, noting that is not actually an add-on, it's a site, but it works in parallel with some of the other add-ons on the list. First, let's hit LVUI up. LVUI can be downloaded if you just Google LVUI. It's on the tuckui.org website. If you go onto LVUI here, scroll down, you can download LVUI. Just go to your downloads folder, extract that, and install it in your add-ons folder in the World of Warcraft directory. To find that, open up Battle.net, go to Options, Show in Explorer. When that opens up, go into your Retail folder, Interface, and Add-ons, and put it in here. So one of the first things you'll see when you get in game is this big LVUI installation box. Most of the time, so you can go through this and set up CVARs, chat. You can set up as a new profile. I tend to use dark coloration, gives you this nice rich dark. I auto scale. This tends to be the best scale. I'm playing in 1440, so it's good. Tank/physical DPS gives you these chunky bars. Healer sets it up so that your party frames are bigger, and caster DPS will make your party frames smaller. You can then choose aura bars and icons, or icons only. So you can have icons or these aura bars. It's like a little cooldown timer bar. I tend to go for icons only at this point, and then you can hit finished. This will reload your UI and apply all your settings. This is actually a pretty good setup as far as you can go. Let me just show you some of the options you can do with LVUI to prove why it is the best package. If you type /EC, look how many different things you can edit here. You can do everything from cooldown text to chat. What I like to do is I like to go into media, find whichever font I want to use. I'll use the default here, sans narrow, with an outline, and apply it to all. Sometimes the outlines don't work on certain things, so up here on my buff bar, the outline's not very good. What you can do is you can then go into them individually, and you can change the outline. Here you go, look, this is why I've got an issue. The buffs and debuffs is font outline is set to mono outline. Mono is very thin, it's usually 1 pixel. But if we just choose outline, there we go, nice and crisp again. What I'll do is I'll quickly set it up how I would normally have it. So this is the sort of basic layout that I would go with. You've got your target frame, your player frame, cast bar is going to be somewhere in the middle here, so that's kind of scuffed. What we can do is we can go into toggle anchors. My player cast bar is down there. What I can do is I can bring it up here on the target cast bar, probably in the middle. I can then go into my unit frames. I go to my player cast bar. I can choose to you can attach or detach it. I like having it detached, but you can have it attached to the power bar. That way, when I cast, it replaces where the power bar is with my cast. Not very useful if you use mana or you're a healer. So what you can do is you can attach it to none. What we can do with the cast bar is we can make sure that it matches the same width as the player button. All we need to do is we need to go into General under the player option. See that's 270. If I go to the cast bar and I now change that value to 270, my cast bar is now the same width, which is great for just hiding it there. And then when I cast now, voila, same width. So you can edit all the kind of different elements, and you can get very technical with the size of debuffs. You can add in custom textures once you get comfortable with that. You can add a portrait. It doesn't really add much, but whatever floats your boat. I like the minimal look, so I'm going to go with that. What I can also do is I can edit the status bar textures. What I tend to go for is LVUI blank, because it looks nice and crisp. It brings up the lightness as well. So yeah, you can edit all kinds of different elements. What I've just noticed is my action bars aren't the same font, so what I can do is I can go into the General tab. I can go Action Bars, General, Fonts. I see it's got the weird outline, so I'll change that to the normal outline, and there you go, it all matches. In fact, I'm having issues reading some of those keybinds, so why don't I increase the font size all the way up? Because I'm blind. There you go, perfect. So you can do all kinds of different things with LVUI. It's fantastic in terms of customization. It's particularly great for healers if you want to track different elements. You can filter out other buffs and certain debuffs. LVUI is really a whole UI package that can replace things like having shadow unit frames as well as grid, as well as something else. It's an amalgamation of lots of different elements, and you can change pretty much everything that you want in there. Next up, we've got the add-on Hekili displayed here. What this is a rotation optimizer and simplification of rotations. This is fantastic if you're like me and you play lots of alts and you forget how to play each class in spec as optimally as possible. What it will show is it will show the best abilities to use at any given time based on parameters that you specify to it, and it'll even change based on whether you're in melee, if you're at ranged, and it also works for every class and spec in the game. So for example, here I am now in BM. It will tell me the best way to use my rotational to do the most damage. It's not always perfect, sometimes you'll be out of range or an ability won't be up as soon as you'd expect, but it's pretty damn good. I essentially use it as like a little cheat sheet when bouncing between different classes. If you open up the Hekili options in game, you can change pretty much anything. You can toggle different things, default potions, you can turn certain aspects off. For example, on my Death Knight, I don't let it tell me what to do in an AoE situation. I only do single target on it because I seem to know better than what the optimization is in terms of ramping up Festering Wounds. But you can play around with it, you can change the different priorities if you really feel like it, but the default's pretty good. I set up my display so that the initial button is larger, and the ones that are following up are smaller. But you can just set it to be one button, so you can reduce it to icons shown 1. You can change the primary icon size, and you can change the position. The next add-on on our list is probably one of the most important, especially for leveling in Shadowlands. It's called DialogKey. And what it allows us to do is allows us to interact with NPCs using the keyboard, so we don't have to press. This is quite useful for example, if I run up to this NPC, I can talk to her, then I can accept the quest with the spacebar. You can also change whichever key this is set to, so I changed mine to E, because I think that's just easier to interact with NPCs. What it also allows you to do is, if you talk to an NPC that's got multiple dialogue options, it lets you press a number in order to choose what you want to do. So 1 in this instance would make this in my home, and 2 would let me browse the goods. This is especially useful for NPCs that got lots of dialogue, and really useful if you're speedrunning or doing content quickly. I just think it's one of the best add-ons you can get in WoW right now. The next add-on on the list is GTFO. GTFO is a warning system for standing in bad. If you find yourself getting stuck in bad or standing in the fire and your raid gets mad at you, this is probably pretty good for you. GTFO in game in the add-ons option, and you can test different sounds. So for example, that's way too loud for me, so what I would do is turn it all the way down to quiet. So here I am, I'm going to display GTFO in action. Gives me a little ping to know that I stepped into something bad. So next on the list is WeakAuras. You can use WeakAuras to track pretty much anything you want. So if you type /WA and enter, it'll bring up this box. Now it can get very confusing, so what I recommend doing is going over to a website called www.wago.io, and you can find pretty much anything you want. So if we go to wago.io, we can search here what we want. So what I want is Survival Hunter. Okay, there's lots of different ones here. You can do best match, you can do number of stars. Ipsy's WeakAuras are a very popular one. Luxlos has done a Hunter Rotations one, a Hunter Resources one. Luxlos is well known in the Hunter community for some fantastic things. What we're going to get is we're going to get Ipsy's WeakAuras. So if we open that up, there's a lot of information here, but all we need to do is press copy WeakAura import string. Then we go back to World of Warcraft, and we hit this import button here, and we just paste that information. And it'll bring up this long list of things here. And it says this aura contains custom Lua code. Make sure you can trust the person who sent it. And we'll just import that. And what you'll see here in the middle of your screen is a bunch of WeakAuras pop up. These will track different things based on your spec, and you can align with the arrows, or you can just drag and drop. You'll note here that these aren't skinned very well, and one of the things I recommend in order to skin these buttons, make them nice and crisp, just like our frames, is this. It's called Skin All Icons. It's another WeakAura. We copy that, and we go back into WeakAuras. We import it. Don't worry about moving this around. It doesn't really need to be anywhere. But you'll look, it's made them nice, clean, and crisp. WeakAuras can be used to track pretty much anything. It can track food buffs. It can track DPS. There's even one for horrific visions. To step up to the next level, what I recommend is an add-on called GottaGoFast. This is used for Mythic Plus dungeons, and you can edit it pretty much any way you want. So I can change the default Blizzard UI to look like the one that I've got here for you. All we need to do is we need to change the tyre font to make sure it matches. So I'm going to choose Expressway because that's my favourite font. And then change the objective font. That way I can make sure it matches my UI and it looks clean, crisp and minimal. I find this a lot better than Astral Keys and a couple other ones. Just purely for how clean you can make it. It's way better for your PC than having a bunch of WeakAuras. WeakAuras can sometimes be bulky, but GottaGoFast, super light. Next on the list is SimulationCraft. If you don't know what SimulationCraft is, it's a suite that's used to check your character's DPS, and you can input different items in order to make sure your character is doing as much damage as possible and try your character in different scenarios without actually doing it. So you can run a simulation in 2 minutes, whereas you might have to wait a week to check out in a raid. If you open SimCraft add-on in-game by typing /simc, it'll give you a lot of information here. And this is pretty much everything you've got equipped, from your Azurite essences to your talent choices, all the way to your professions. So that's every single item you're wearing. What you can do with this information is you can go to a website called RaidBots. So what you can do is you can go to RaidBots, you can click Top Gear, paste in the data from the SimCraft add-on, and it will list everything that's in your bags, and you can try out different combinations. So I'm going to try out, okay, let's check to see what my best Azurite traits are on the gear I've got. I can add enchants and gems, try different Azurite essences, different talent builds, and this is one of the main ones. This is how you change your statistics or the parameters around the fight you're in. What I recommend doing is making sure Bloodlust is off and only using buffs you realistically would have. So for instance, I'm probably not going to have those. What you can also do is change the fight style. A patchwork fight is one that's standing still. It's like a DPS race. No movement, no mechanics. There's a bunch of different ones here. So Dungeon Slice imitates doing a Mythic Plus or something similar. Fights with light movement, heavy movement, Cleave Add, Beast Lord or an Old Traction style fight. I wouldn't use the Hectic Add Cleave or the Dungeon Slice. I would focus mainly on patchwork. If you're trying to sim for Mythic Plus AoE DPS, what I recommend doing is changing the number of bosses. I usually use 3 and go for a 3-minute long fight. This is probably going to be the most accurate information I can get, and then I make sure my raid buffs match. And then what you do is you find your top gear. You usually have a small queue to wait in, and just like that, out comes my hunter. And it tells me actually I should be using these Azurite traits, which I'm not currently using, so I know that I can go and change those. The next thing we can do is go into the stat weight section on RaidBots. If we click that, and then input the information from the previous screen, what we can then do is generate the stat weight, and what this will do is find out what the best stats are for our spec and align them. So what I can tell from this is weapon DPS is always going to be my top. Any increase in weapon DPS is always going to be the best thing from his DPS, as you'd expect. Next is haste, then crit, verse, mastery, and agility actually gives me basically nothing at this point. Now you can go away and you can just think, okay, I need to look for haste and crit. The other thing we can do with this information is we can go down to the pawn string here. This is why we installed that add-on pawn. What we can do is if we copy that information and we go back into WoW, type /pawn, what we do is we can then import. As long as you're managing your scales manually, you go into import, paste that information, and it shows that. So what this shows is that crit, haste, and versatility are pretty much my best stats. And if I hover over any items in inventory, it'll tell you whether it's an upgrade. So that shows it's a 20% upgrade based on those stats. What I can then do is I can go in and I can equip that under whatever my second best is, and there you go. This is like, I feel like I'm auditioning for a dance troupe.
Say when?
3, 2, 1. Yeah!